For the second session of the 2025 Widening the Pipeline launch, we're going to unpack the elements of a successful mentor-mentee relationship. We're joined today by three journalists who will share some insights into how to leverage the expertise and advice from a journalist who's already walked the paths that you're walking right now. First, Catalina Camia is a longtime mentor and supporter for scores of journalists in America today. She is the deputy news director at Bloomberg Law, where she manages teams covering labor, intellectual property and privacy, environment, health, and corporate news. She's had several senior newsroom roles, including as editor-in-chief and vice president of CQ Roll Call, where she managed more than 50 journalists covering news and analysis about Congress and the federal government. Now, I could spend the rest of this evening highlighting Kat's accomplishments in journalism, so I'll just tell you to go to nationalpress.org and read her full bio. But one thing you should know is that as a board member of the National Press Foundation, Kat was instrumental in creating the Widening the Pipeline Fellowship. So she's why we're here today, part of why we're here today. Next, her mentee, Bianca Quilantan, is a higher education reporter for Politico. And she was also a Widening the Pipeline Fellow last year. She's been at Politico since, is it 2019? Or
yeah.
2019. Prior to that, she got her start in journalism as the weekend reporter for the Chico Enterprise Record, where she covered the Camp Fire, which was California's deadliest and most destructive fire at the time.
At the time, yeah.
And she was named a finalist for the 2019 Pulitzer Prize in breaking news. Amazing. And speaking of breaking news, last but most definitely not least, we are joined by Torrance Latham. He is the breaking news editor for the Miami Herald. Torrance was also a member of the original Widening the Pipeline class. One of his mentors was actually the 2023 Editor of the Year for the National Press Foundation, Monica Richardson, who is now senior editor with Gannett. Torrance was a member of the Herald's Pulitzer Prize winning team for the coverage of the Surfside condo collapse, which Monica oversaw as then the editor of the Herald herself. So we have an incredible collection of folks here who are going to talk to us about insights about the mentor-mentee relationship and how you can get the most out of your experience this year. So Kat, Torrance, and Bianca, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to start with Kat because her record of mentorship and supporting journalists across the board, but certainly within AAJA, is unparalleled. But I wanted to start by asking you to think of an early mentor in your career, somebody whose support or advice made a difference for you.
I was very fortunate to go to the University of Southern California, which at the time had a pretty well-known journalism program. It's now called the Annenberg School for Communication. But there were a couple of groups housed within the J School, one of which was the California Chicano News Media Association. And one of my early mentors was a professor at USC and also one of the founders of CCNMA, Felix Gutierrez. And Felix is now since retired from USC, also taught at Stanford and some other places. But at various times throughout my career, Felix has been there to offer advice and counsel, even if we didn't have like a formal relationship of student and professor or mentor and mentee. And here's why. I was a much younger emerging journalist, and I didn't know anything about how to get an internship, how to get my start. I knew I just wanted to be in LA because that's where the media was. CCNMA at USC at the time organized an annual job fair. And Felix was actually a mentor to two of my friends at J School who were also active in the Daily Trojan. And Felix met me in a casual situation and said, hey, you should come to the job fair and to just check it out. And there I was. I had to go buy a suit. Okay, I was a scholarship student. I never dressed up before. And I had my best friend's mother take me to the fashion district in LA so we could get, a nice looking suit. And I got my resume together, and Felix was the one who pushed me out there. Now, I don't recall if I did well at that job fair, but it got me the taste of, meeting with recruiters and learning to come out of my shell, because he would push me and go, you should talk to this person from the LA Times. And I would say, I'm not ready for the LA Times, right? And so even as a college student, then as I was getting my start as a government and politics reporter and trying to decide, should I move to Texas? I don't know anybody in Texas. I don't think there are a lot of people who look like me in Texas. Okay, that's a story I'll tell someday about constantly being mistaken for a Spanish-speaking Latina reporter when in fact, my family is from the Philippines. I'm first generation US born. And I would just occasionally back then run into Felix at in professional settings and conferences, or I'd call him, or then email became the thing and I'd drop him a note. And he's always been someone I could talk to candidly, someone who had the perspective of not just an educator, but someone who knew the business, who knew people in the business. And it was something that you will hear a lot between you and your mentors. Felix was a safe place for me. Someone with whom I could just kind of let my hair down and go, hey, I'm at a crossroads. Where do I go? What do I do? And to this day, I probably last talked to him, maybe 2 years ago before I took the job at Bloomberg Industry. And again, I said, hey, I'm kind of figuring out what to do. What do I do next? And so he's always been there for me.
Let's ask your co-panelists the same question. So Torrance, tell me about an early mentor and what he or she may have meant to you.
I'll skip over Monica because I felt like I would say, well, first I'll give two. I would say an undergrad would even push me to journalism was co-hosting an afternoon drive at a radio station. He happened to be the only owner of a black radio station, probably in the South at that time, but definitely in Louisiana. And at the time, I was an education major. I thought I wanted to teach. I loved working with kids. I thought I had that youthful exuberance that can resonate with them. But this was around Trayvon Martin era. So I'm getting to know who I am as a black man in this society and in Louisiana. Don't got to go there. And I thought we were able to have some conversations that kind of opened up my perspective. And I saw the reaction from the audience. They call in once I started kind of going on my rants because I'd be so frustrated every day. And this was kind of like the early Black Lives Matter movement. It was definitely my awakening. I mean, I recall a few police shootings and stuff like that being in media, but I think that was like a very pivotal point for me. And as I was, kind of figuring out my identity, I felt like I was kind of seen in the media space in that moment. I'm like, you know what? I have a voice now. And I always run my mouth as a kid. And they definitely told me I would probably make money running my mouth one day. But never did I think until that moment, it was like an aha, like an Oprah Super Soul conversation moment. And from there, I think, my mom wasn't happy about it, but I was like, look, I'm going to be in school a little bit longer because I think I need to kind of really pivot. And that was my first imposter syndrome moment. Because I want to talk to y'all about that. Because I think as we talk about mentorship, we have to be very open about our vulnerabilities. And I did not have any media expertise. I was very raw, kind of still raw, but I was rawer at that time. And I thought I thought I had great. He was my mentor as from a business owner's perspective. He wasn't in media, but from there, I took my own agency. I reached out to people at TV stations in Baton Rouge, print people, and then I wrote for my college paper. No previous experience doing that. And I just kind of threw myself into it because I believe there's no such thing as imposter syndrome. You are who you are. All of your lived experience up to that very moment that you feel called to do something is what you bring to the table. He allowed me as a kid to kind of be in the same arena as he. And I didn't even realize the power of that at the time, but he gave me the push and nudge to be authentically who I became. Then as I took the road down journalism, I still was kind of in one foot in, one foot out. I was doing PR, marketing. I was a hustler. I worked at a call center. I had many jobs, Jamaican style. But if you know any Jamaicans, you know what I'm saying. But anyway, so I had many jobs, and I felt like at the time I was a jack of all trades and a master of none. And before I graduated, I had a conversation with him, pretty much like, all right, I like this media stuff. I had been writing for the paper. I did several internships at TV stations or whatever, but I still didn't feel like I had a solid stronghold in journalism, and I didn't feel like, where do I fit? I did several different things across platforms. Where do I fit in this equation? So I chose to go to grad school. Again, my mom didn't agree with that. She was like, you should go get an MBA. But I was like, no, I want to do journalism. She's like, you ain't going to make no money doing that. And I hate to throw my mom is great, by the way. I'm using her to tell this larger story about believing and betting on yourself. So he told me, listen, you got the prerequisite experience, you've done the work. You have to believe in the work you're doing. You have to believe if you were called to do something, it doesn't matter what anybody say, mom, dad, brother, sister, cousin. You do what you feel like God, divine, the trees, whatever has moved, the wind has blown for you to do this work, do it. And do it full-fledged. So from there, I applied to 2 or 3 colleges. I landed one at Boston University. At the same time, became a dad. So like that kind of changed my life at the same time. And from there, I kind of really created a path of my own. And I would say probably second semester, I started doing a little more in NABJ. I became like a student monitor, did like student projects or whatever for the NAHJ and ABJ conference, like 2016 at the time. And that's where I met Delano Massey. Who now he's at Axios doing amazing things, but at the time he was like my OG mentor, and he had the similar thing where, I was again rough around the edges. I had been doing at that time I think more TV stuff. He was print, so when I joined the projects, even though I'm on TV, I just wanted an opportunity to show what I could do. So I joined the print side, and I was working with the print team the whole way. They didn't even know I wasn't even in print at the time. And I think I made an impression on him once he realized, he critiqued my writing so much that week, but after he realized, oh, this dude wasn't even in that, and he still chose to do that, he took me. So this is you being authentically who you are. You never know who's watching you, right? That's what you have to keep in mind. And you have to be willing to step outside of your comfort zone. That is something that I started doing radio in undergrad, but I sharpened it by the time I had gotten to graduate school. And with the impetus of being a father, it's like, listen, man, I'm going for it all. It's all or nothing for me. Or I'm going right back to the crib and working my many jobs in Baton Rouge. But for me, that wasn't an option. So I knew I had to find my people, my community at that very moment. Me leaving home from Louisiana, going to Boston, polar opposite everything. I didn't have anybody, but then that's when you realize you have the world. because everywhere you go, everywhere your feet are planted is where you're supposed to be. And from there, I had a real conversation with him about really, listen, TV's great, but I like the accountability, impact work that you're doing in the print space. Can you tell me more about that? We would have off-the-record combos, back and forth. He gave me a lot of feedback. I was working, I think, at CNN at the time, working under Wolf Blitzer and Jake Tapper's TV show, doing TV producing, literally nothing in writing. But I watered that, nurtured that connection I had with Delano, and I think like a year or two later, I was either going to go Cuomo's show at the time. I was going to move to New York and go take Cuomo's show as like an AP, or I was going to bet on myself and work at the AP with Delano, because he had been telling me, listen, if you don't really know how you fit in the CNN bubble, I think you have a lot of potential as a writer, maybe even editor. I'm like, I hear you, bro, but I like this cushion job at CNN. And we were doing really, this is 17, 18, we were doing some hella good work in DC at the time. This is when Trump was really kind of rocking and rolling in his first iteration of being a president. But I told him, I'm like, listen, if you really see this in me, you're very good at what you do, and I don't feel like you would be blowing smoke to me. So I had to really kind of really sit in, I meditated on it. I was like, you know what, if this is like my opportunity to bet on myself again, maybe I need to go ahead and do that. So the CNN people were looking at me crazy, because they had kind of groomed me for 3 or 4 years to kind of thrust me into like a TV show, either on TV or off it. Whatever I wanted, they were really kind of giving me that. They're like, we're giving you access to CNN and you don't think that's enough? I'm like, it's not that it's not enough, but I think you'll respect me more if I left, became who I became, and then I can come back. And I feel like my leverage will go up. And I told him that. I feel like if I've watched how you had people go through the ranks and they kind of get pigeonholed, or they have to wait their turn. I'm not a wait my turn type of person. And I encourage all of you to not wait your turn either. You take your turn. You know what I mean? It's by being proactive. So I told them, listen, I'm going to choose to bet on myself, and maybe down the line, if the universe allows it, maybe we can find that synchronicity, and I can come back. But the price point will be a little different. Because mentors will tell you that when you leave and come back, you get a little more respect, because it shows you don't really need them or any one thing, because you believe in you. So I took the job at AP, moved to Chicago, took my baby, you know what I mean? And from there, I really started sharpening my penmanship. AP broke me down so much my first couple of, because it's a different style of writing. I'm sorry if I'm being too long, but I wanted to.
I just want to jump in quickly and say,
go ahead.
every time I hear this man speak, it's like, first of all, you were way overqualified for widening the pipeline. I feel like you're going to take my job one day. But you can see why he was sort of a natural leader to the cohort, that first cohort, somebody who had the energy and the initiative to not only, express his goals and what he wanted to do, but also to support his colleagues. It's so impressive. I'm so proud of you. We'll keep the convo going.
Yeah.
I want to get Bianca in at this point to talk about an early mentor.
Yeah, and I'll be brief. But my first mentor was also in college, and I think what was really valuable from him was that he built me up at a moment when I was really down. I had just flunked out of college, had received a letter in the mail. If you know Latino parents, like if you flunk out of college, like you're dead, like, like flat out dead. And so my mother was not really speaking to me because she was really upset with me. That was her dream for me, was you're going to go to college and you're going to get a degree and you're going to do something incredible with your life. And so you go to college, and I enrolled at community college because that's what you do. You have to pick yourself up. But I was way down here. And so this professor who was in this class, it was like mass media. It was one of those very generic classes that you take at the very beginning of your college experience. Was like, he pulled me aside. He had read something that I'd written. He was like, you can write. And that's very difficult to find, is someone who can write well. And I was like, oh, I just write. I don't know. I just submit the assignment. I'm just trying to pass. Just kind of that little spark was like one small buildup. And then the next time around, we got comfortable with each other. And I finally told him, I was like, I flunked out of college. Like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I think it's over. And he was like, your journey isn't over. That's just a bump that's getting you to the road that you're meant to be on. And so he's the guy who really pushed me and built me up at that moment, and that was so valuable because I had like no self-worth at that time. And so he is also the person that put me into journalism classes. He was a journalism professor. And so he was like, come into this newspaper and write. He's like, here's your first story assignment. And it was like, call Lorena Gonzalez, who's an assembly member in California. And I was like, you can call these people? Like, that's terrifying. And I'm like picking up the phone. I'm like, hello, is this Miss Gonzalez? Like, super uncomfortable. But he had told me like, no, it is your job and you can talk to anyone. Because not everybody feels like they can. And so just small moments like that building you up was incredibly important. And just being able to be in a room and being able to present myself with my shoulders and head held high from a moment that was really dark was just such an incredible thing for me leaving community college. And he also told me, he's the guy who pushed me to apply to go to a four-year college. I wasn't going to. I really felt like I was done, like I was not going to be able to make it through. And he's like, no, you have to go. And so he just kind of guided my four-year path there. And, I also built other mentors when I started applying for these internships, and he was my biggest letter of recommendation for everything. And so that was just, someone who was really in your corner the whole time. And he also told me, he was like, your next best mentor is not going to be a college professor. It's going to be someone who's in your industry. And he's like, but pick someone that's maybe 1 to 2 years older than you or is in a job that you could get right out of college. And so I had another mentor who was at the Chronicle of Higher Ed. And we just developed a relationship when I was an intern there. And she would tell me what her path was to get to her job, from intern to reporter and so on. And so I would call her up when I was first getting my my offers, and I think one of them was $13 an hour full time. I was like, I just got a job offer. It's $13 an hour. And she's like, no, you can't take that. And I was like, am I going to get another one? I don't know. And she's like, no, you'll get another. And then the next one was 17. And she's like, okay, but then what's the opportunity from there to get to where you want to go? And I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm stuck in Chico at 17 if we're really thinking about it. And so she's like, and then I got offered the internship at Politico for $15 an hour. She's like, that's a happy medium, but you also know that you are going to work hard to make sure that ends up in a job. And so take the opportunity that will give you the most opportunities later. And like that advice has been, I would not be at Politico for 6 years had I not taken her advice. I was hired within 2 months as an intern because I was there with my 2 suitcases and I was not going to leave DC without them kicking me out like the college did. So yeah, those. And then now I have Kat, who's a great mentor too.
Before we get to go ahead.
I want to go back to something that Torrance said. It's very important because this is the beginning of widening the pipeline and the beginning of your journey in this program, which does not end when you all leave in DC, okay? And let's talk about imposter syndrome, okay? If you take nothing away from the time you spend in Washington except for this, I'll be happy. And here's the message that you need to carry with you every single day on your journey as a journalist. You belong in every room that you are in, no matter what you look like, no matter your background, no matter your education level, you belong. That is not a message that journalists of color of my generation heard initially, okay? And I look out at all of you, and I know from working with Bianca, working with emerging journalists I meet through AAJA or other organizations, your generation has an innate power to hold your heads up high and square your shoulders, okay, in a way that my generation did not have, okay. What Bianca found to call the assemblywoman, okay, you all have it. You all fight for your place at the table in ways that, again, us old heads didn't do, okay? And if you learn nothing, if you take away nothing from this program other than hearing me say to you, or Torrance or Bianca, you belong in every room. Never doubt that, okay? I'm very fortunate at Bloomberg Industry that when I walk into a director's meeting, I see lots of women, right, Trey? Our editor-in-chief is a woman. Several of the news directors are women. And that wasn't the case. I'm not going to tell them when we all started, but that wasn't the case back when, back when I started. And so the relationships that you build these next couple of days, mentoring and mentorship, and really taking part in programs like this, it's about finding your people, okay? Finding your people, whether it's Trey calling Jesse up in a few months and going, man, I'm going through this. Or one of you reaching out to me or Rachel 2 years from now and just reminding us where we met. We're now connected through this program. And the best thing about formal mentor and mentoring mentee relationships is that you build a trust and you as partners work together to figure out what you want out of that relationship. And I will say that Bianca was very sweet and kind at the end of our formal mentor relationship. She gave me a very sweet Christmas gift. But I told her I got as much out of the mentoring relationship as I hope she did, because reliving some of the things that, again, I thought I had crossed on my road, or drawing from her energy to deal with some of the things that I may not have wanted to talk about that I was going through, it helped a lot. So going back to what Torrance said about imposter syndrome, you belong everywhere you're at, okay? Just remember that.
I am so glad that Torrance and now you have mentioned that topic, because that's actually going to be one of our virtual training sessions. The API has a formal training on this topic. I believe that'll be in May, so you can look forward to that. Before I ask the both of you to talk about your widening experience, I want to ask you, Kat, talk about why you and Sudeep and Sunny and whoever was involved in that process thought it would be a good idea to create a formal mentoring program for early career journalists of color.
A couple things. Our mantra here at the National Press Foundation is we make good journalists better. But that pipeline needs to look like the America we live in, okay? And I was involved for many years in AAJA, and every program that I created when I was in leadership was aimed at, in essence, widening the pipeline. And so a couple of years ago, we were talking at the board level and with our then executive director about how, wait, have we backslided in an era in which Trayvon Martin and George Floyd and Asian American hate dominate the headlines? Why is it that we are still yearning for the people who look like us to tell stories, whether it's in print, broadcast, radio, what have you? And we realized that, we had to go back to the beginning. And that's where this program began with, I think, we were, those of us on the board who worked and tossed around ideas to create the program, we talked very much about how we wanted people at a certain stage in their career. We wanted people from across the United States. We especially wanted to include the in-person component as well as the mentoring component. Because it's just, yes, you can go to J school, get an internship to learn how to write a lead, okay, or to put together a highlight reel or a package. But sometimes you need a situation, a program, to help you just kind of look into yourself and figure out who you are and what your place is. And that's what Widening the Pipeline today has become.
Torrance, when you joined the program, I had no idea you had this depth of experience and connections that you had. I believe I attempted to connect you with Ken Cooper, and you had some conversations with Ken.
He was on his way out, retiring.
Yeah, he was retiring. Yeah. Kenneth Cooper is a legendary journalist. He was one of the Metro 7 at the Washington Post, one of the people who sued the Post back in 1972 about hiring practices and journalists of color. So that's another aspect of Widening that I'm proud of, is that we do try to put you in front of people who are the reason we are able to sit in a newsroom today. But talk a little bit about why you wanted to join Widening and about those conversations with Ken, some of them.
I would say Monica was very instrumental in me joining this.
Tell everybody who Monica is.
So Monica at the time was the first Black executive editor at Miami Herald's 100-year plus history. And I was her first hire. Now that I think about that, cool. So, you know, I took a great responsibility in that. Delano, who I mentioned to y'all earlier, full circle moment, that was his mentor when he first became an editor. She gave him his first editing job. So when I chose to bet on myself again at AP and left them, one of the first opportunities that arose at the time was the Miami Herald. At that time I had no idea. They didn't announce her at the time, but it just shows you how the universe works. A couple of weeks later, she gets the announcement. Delano calls me like, about that interview with the Herald. He's like, you know who the executive editor is? I'm like, no, I don't. He's like, call you right back. Long story short, we ended up hitting it up. She then, let's be honest, in the newsroom leadership space, it's not a lot of people of color, but Black men in particular, almost non-existent in many spaces. I don't have to tell you what I was when I came at the Herald. I was the one, Now they did have a sports editor, but he was probably 40 years older than me now, which doesn't matter. But I felt like for my millennial, my boy, that's all.
We're
We're 40 years old.
We're 40 years old. But that's fun. That's fun.
What had happened was, but I mentioned that because I felt, I won't say alone, but anything I said had all eyes on it. Like, oh wow, that's a younger person's perspective. Oh, that's a Black perspective. Oh, that's a Black young male perspective. So I was just like, where do I fit in this equation of editors? Now the reporters, they were around we were cool. But in the editor space, which is older and white, I didn't have my people, is what I was trying to say. Joining the pipeline immediately within the first day or two, I was like, oh, this is home for me. And sometimes, again, home doesn't always have to be in a traditional sense. I work at the Herald, but I found more home. Shout out to the Herald. I found more home in the NPF pipeline than I did in my own newsroom. And I think that experience empowered me and made me feel like, you know what? Okay, maybe I am the only one, but I'm going to be the one. You know what I mean? And I'm going to carry all of that with me, and I'm going to kick these doors down so the pipeline will never look like this ever again. And I made that resolution that same week, and we haven't looked back. We still have our group. We're going to one of our people's weddings. She's getting married soon, and we're all going to do an NPF reunion coming to a full circle moment. We talked about that today. So I'm just saying, this is the Gabby.
Yeah.
She's like me too.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that's the power of it. The person people go so hard for looking up, like they're trying to get to the next step up. Man, look around you. Look to this is who you need to be getting down with. Not get down with the executives, but you need to know them even better and have these real, not transactional, real, and not, hey, do y'all have a job opportunity? Be like, hey, how was your day? How are you feeling? How's your mental health these days? Be real. And I think through that authenticity, you will build your community in an organic way that won't feel forced or, like you're pushing with an agenda. This is where you can be free. We can talk free. Maybe I'm talking too free. Shout out to the Herald. But I'm just saying, But I do feel like this is where I felt the most free. I'm very comfortable. I feel like I'm in a cohort again, just even seeing y'all and talking to y'all, because this is exactly what this was like for me. And it's so weird being on this side of it, because I was very much, I remember the days where I was sitting right next to where you were. So.
And one of the things we're really excited about this year is that we have 9 men in this cohort.
Yes.
The first year was 3.
3, yeah.
Last year, I think 4. And so this year, we got some equity going on here. Bianca, I want to talk with you about your early connection with Kat. When we arranged that, and what impressed me at the time was that you were familiar with her reporting.
Yes.
On the fire.
Yes.
And so there was that sort of instant connection. But when that came about, what were your thoughts about how you were going to leverage that relationship?
I mean, first off, I was a little shocked. I'm not going to lie. I was like, you know who? Me? Yeah. So, that was my first take. And then the second part was just, realizing that this is another person who can be in your corner. And so the fact that Rachel set us up was just a really great part of the widening the pipeline. I mean, Kat and I met virtually in person because we're both in the DC area, and it was just invaluable. At the beginning, we set up some kind of general thoughts or rules, I guess, or not even rules. I don't know what the thing is, but we would have a plan for what we wanted to talk about, and that was really important because then we could both get something out of it. And, it would be like, my manager or interim manager is driving me nuts. How do I handle this? And she just really created this safe space for me to express it, because I hadn't had any turmoil, to be honest, at Politico. I was very happy. My team is so diverse, which is crazy. We have a Latina, a Latino, a Black woman editor. It doesn't happen, and so my team, I felt great. And then all of a sudden it wasn't great. I still love working there, but all of a sudden it wasn't. And Kat was a really safe space to talk about how to navigate that, because it was only going to be a temporary situation. So we had conversations like that. We also had conversations about writing or interviewing styles, which were really valuable, especially when I was trying to craft pitches, because sometimes when you work with editors, they just oh no, that's not a story. I don't really want to work with that, right? And so having the opportunity to talk to her about that, or look at my resume or anything like that, it just was just such a great thing. And then also we got to talk about other things like my wedding or spam or California, things like that. And so it was more than just talking work. And it was just nice to go grab coffee or a pastry. So
I had recognized Bianca's name because I am from the San Francisco Bay Area. And the town where I went to high school several years ago also went through these horrific fires in Santa Rosa, California. And I just remember the campfire coverage. And honestly, I remember reading about a young college student who was part of the group that was cited by the Pulitzer Committee. And when I saw Bianca's placard here, her name card, I went, oh my God, you're the woman, I know who you are. Well, did not know her, glad I do now, but I recognized her name. And it's, again, going back to what Bianca said, okay, I'm just going to say it. I've been in this business long enough that I probably know somebody in each of your newsrooms. And if I don't know somebody in your newsroom, I know somebody who used to work in your newsroom, because that's the way journalism works. Okay, where there's 1 degree of separation. And one of the things that I do have very, very good friends and a fellow board member who works at Politico and who's, in the leadership ranks. And I said, look, everything is safe with me. I'm not going to go running to the person I know who's in management at Politico and say, Bianca really hates X. So it was important to, again, assure Bianca that everything was safe. And the other thing I said, or at least I remember saying, was, look, I'm going to say a lot of things that you may not agree with. There may be some things that might work to help you out of whatever jam, but it's just another set of insights. I know that there's another mentor that Bianca works with who is more closely aligned with her professional beat right now, which is covering higher education. And the two of us actually did have completely opposite pieces of advice about an opportunity that came up. And that's cool. That's cool. But one thing before Rachel gives you or pairs you up with a mentor is really think about what you want out of the relationship. In various formal mentoring opportunities I've done throughout the years, the ones that are more beneficial both for the person I'm trying to mentor and me is when the person I'm trying to guide and help actually has a plan. Hey, I need to do X, Y, and Z. Or here are the 4 big things I really want to work on. Do you have the time to work on them with me? I think I told Bianca this early on, I had a horrible experience with, in a different program that I will not name since we're taping, where the emerging Asian American journalists just didn't really have a to-do list. They just wanted to talk, which is cool, but you're all busy, your mentors are all busy, so make the most of it. The other thing that I want to say is you will learn the difference between mentorship and sponsorship, okay? Mentorship is when you have a group of people that you can call on, your board of directors, your advisors, whatever you want to call them. A sponsor is someone who rolls up their sleeve and says, Torrance, I know you're eyeing a job that will give you this kind of platform or this kind of money or that will take you to the next step. I've heard of something. Are you interested? And let me make a call. That's sponsorship, okay? And yes, your mentor can be a sponsor eventually, but very important to understand the difference between the two.
Before I open it up for questions, I want to drive that point home.
That's good.
Because it's so important. With a quick example, and that is one of last year's fellows, Julian Saraparu of the Globe, referred me to a young man in Atlanta who had been laid off and was having some challenges and needed some encouragement. And so I set up a Zoom with him in the evening time, and we're on the Zoom, and he was distracted and sort of looking off to the side, and he didn't really have anything to say. And I thought, I could end this right now by telling him, if you don't know what you want, don't waste my time. No, I wouldn't have said it like that, but I was tempted almost to do that. But I decided, look, he's got a half hour of my time. I'm going to say some things to him. And I said, you know, in an interaction, look me in the eye. If you're not looking me in the eye and you're off and doing whatever, then that breaks the connection. But more importantly, what do you want to talk to me about? I don't know you from a hole in the ground, but I've taken time out to talk with you. So leverage that time. I try to be available to as many people as possible. But if you don't know what you want or you don't have anything to say to me, then you know the connection is broken. So I want you all to be very cognizant of the extraordinary opportunity that you're going to have over this next year. It's what you make of it. It's how prepared you are when you're interacting with these folks. That will make the difference. But let's open it up. Are there any questions right now? Yes.
I was about to say, don't be shy.
And introduce yourself.
Hello. It was a really nice conversation to kind of gauge in and listen. My name is Johnny Perez. I am with WHYY Public Media, Delaware-based reporter, so I cover almost everything general assignment. My question, so I'm not going to complain because I think my newsroom is very, at least in my eyes, very healthy. But I only say that because I'm not at headquarters like that 24/7 because I'm Delaware based. So I'm in Delaware at my Delaware office. But sometimes at the Delaware desk, it's just 3 of us reporters there. So it's really hard to find your people when it's only 3 people there in the office. And not only that, their work from home schedules are complete opposite than you. So sometimes you end up being by yourself in the office. And I've tried to do some, getting to meet people and all this and that, but I'm the only Latino in the newsroom, period. So when I'm writing my stories, like I'm going to do things for my people because I know the stories is real and it needs to be out there. But sometimes it's so nice to just hear from somebody that relates to you or like being Latinos in the newsroom. But how do you like navigate through that? I went into the field. This is my first job ever. I've been with WHYY for almost 3 years now. It's a great experience, but I think I'm still having trouble on connecting with individuals in that aspect. So I don't know if there's like any advice or have you experienced anything like that? And we all know Latinos that there's barely any people Latinos in the newsroom, period, too, in media. Like the disparity there, it's visible. So
Yeah, I don't want to brag, but I've connected Johnny with Daisy Calavia Robertson.
Great.
I think
Great.
it's going to be a game changer. But what are your thoughts about?
Ladies.
Well, I mean, you've taken a great step already by being here, and so just unfortunately, sometimes there aren't big groups of. I'm being real because like I was in Chico and I was the only Latina person in general. At my newsroom, there were 10 of us, so I'm being real. You got to expand your net. Unfortunately, it might not be directly in Delaware, but there's always like NAHJ, which is a national conference. If you can go, there's maybe a local chapter of NAHJ, right? There's a lot of virtual meetups sometimes too, which are cool because we're in the age of the internet, and so like if you need to find your group, it might be like that. I think there's also like a Journalist of Color Slack channel for everybody. So it's like finding your people online, because like I wasn't going to find them in Chico. I knew it, and now I'm in DC and we have a very strong, healthy NAHJ chapter here. But like this was an incredible first step for you. Yeah.
I have a related question, actually.
Philly too. Delaware, look into Philly.
It's not too far. Yeah. I mean, you can come down to DC on the train.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've experienced, and I'm actually currently still, Lionel Ramos. I cover state government for KUSU public radio station in Oklahoma City. Being in Oklahoma, at the first job that I was at Oklahoma Watch, which was an investigative nonprofit, right? I was there with Report for America. I was the only Latino in a staff of 4 reporters, and 3 editors for no reason, because they ended up losing 2 of them anyway. My question relates to communicating to leadership, editors, people who have a management over you to some degree, the difference between expertise and membership in a group, and making that clear enough to be able to then move on to the next step, which is like actually doing the reporting, right, and making the phone calls and the connections and stuff like that with whatever community it is that you are a member of that needs coverage. In our case, in Oklahoma, it's Latinos. But there's, I mean, just thinking about all the disparities that exist in newsrooms, there's a huge Vietnamese population in Oklahoma. I can't think of a single journalist that's Vietnamese or has any kind of like Asian descent, frankly, that's working in a newsroom full time, doing something other than like a culture writing, right? Which is honorable and useful and necessary, but not necessarily accountable, right? And I wonder what you guys make of that dynamic of the expertise and membership and the job, which is the accountability.
Okay. I have to tell this story. Back in the day, I'm working in Dallas, and the Gulf War is about to start, okay? And various people on the Metro desk were given assignments to get reaction. And the very honorable Middle Eastern family that ran the falafel restaurant, okay, that several people in the newsroom knew, they were like the designated Middle Eastern voice, right? And I learned over the years that we all had to work harder to expand the voices that we interviewed, all right? And so I understand what you're saying about the demographics of Oklahoma, but you all will hear tomorrow night at the dinner from Suki Dardarian, who is NPF's Editor of the Year. And
actually here for tomorrow. She's going to be speaking.
Oh, great. Ask Suki what she and her newsroom did to, after the killing of George Floyd, to actually get different voices in their news in their news coverage, and how she responded to questions, concerns, actual recommendations from the journalists of color in her newsroom, because what they learned was, number one, there was strength in numbers, right? And number two, okay, so maybe at that time in Dallas there wasn't a large Middle Eastern population, but there were Latinos, there were African Americans, right? And so through them, we learned of others who were Middle Eastern. You talk about Vietnamese in Oklahoma? Okay. Again, right across the border in Dallas and farther south in Houston, 2 really, really large Vietnamese populations, particularly in Houston. And you never know what connections they may have in Oklahoma. But you make a very keen observation about the difference between membership in a group and representation. Because just because, you know, you are the Latina teacher at a middle school doesn't make that Latina teacher the spokeswoman for all, right?
No, for sure. And I think that, you know, that dynamic is one that I guess is will probably be explored in perpetuity, I imagine. But it becomes a very practical barrier, because, and not to make excuses, right? But like when you're the only person in the newsroom, and when you look around, there's no one else that looks like you or sounds like you or understands you. And then you go and you write a story. You go to the community, and I do most of my reporting in the Latino community in Spanish, because it's necessary. And you take back these stories, and they're not always receptive, right? Or there's like a weird skepticism that just feels misplaced. Like, right, to take it away from Latinos, I was doing a story on Afghan refugees in 2021 when they were being resettled in Oklahoma, and I was writing about the difficulties they were having with food stamps and all of these different things and getting their humanitarian parole and their work permits. And my editor was like, why do we have to use the Afghans? Why are they more important than, say, black folks in Tulsa who are suffering from a lot of the same things? Which is a valid question, I think. And when I proposed, I was like, well, to that I say, why don't we have more black reporters? And the question, and then it's like, well, then you're making the assumption that you need a black reporter to cover black communities. And so we're like, it goes in circles. And then I have a bad taste in my mouth, right? And then I go throughout the day in my work thinking about that as I'm listening to someone who's about to get deported or who can't get their food stamps or is off healthcare or something like that, right? And so it's like, I know there's not a clear answer, but there's a real struggle there that I am curious exploring with everyone else here too.
We could talk offline about how you can navigate that.
We can take one more question.
Dang, it's so soon already, huh?
Yeah,
Wow,
so we're running out of time.
that's good.
I'll try to make mine quick. Gabriela Nunez. I'm a special projects producer for the NBC affiliate in Atlanta, but I'm actually from Miami. So, Torrance, my question is largely for you. I am one of the only Latinos, Latinas in my newsroom, but it is a diverse newsroom. As we all know, Atlanta is a majority black. I'm sure you've experienced working at the Herald, which is my hometown paper, 305 till I die. You said that you were the one and only, but it was, I'm assuming, somewhat of a diverse paper that you had people of different Caribbean descent and then Latin Americans as well. I'm curious, how did you navigate that, trying to make the argument that we could be more diverse?
Oh, I told them you need to be more diverse. But well, first of all, you have to be, they hired you for a reason. Don't ever muzzle your voice. They hired you, they knew you had a mouth when they hired you. I like to think that's how I think about it.
It's true, they said so.
But I'm just saying, that is where you use your agency. I believe all of you are change agents. We are all change agents. They did not expect us to be here, but we kicked these doors down and came here anyway. So you have nothing to lose by speaking your voice. That is your superpower. You should never lose that. Now, to your how did I navigate that? I mean, I did chess, not checkers. I knew I had a great relationship with Monica. My direct report might not have been as aligned in that vision, but I knew I had Monica. Then I knew I had a little people next to Monica who she plugged me in with. So I just kind of worked around the things that could be obstacles for me, and I outsmarted them, and then I made it diverse by recruiting on my own. I took again, it's all about agency, man. By coming here, NPF, I'm able to meet so many different people whose bosses might be looking for something, whose colleagues, them. This is what it's all about. This is why I tell you, focus less on is vertical? Focus less on vertical, more horizontal connections. That's how I did it. I would talk to the other editors, be like, dang, man, it's a lot of older white people. And I'm telling the white person this. I'm like, what can, as a younger who's ambitious, I picked their brain and I made them feel convicted. Like, dang, you're right. We haven't been diverse in X amount, if ever, at the Herald. But and membership thing you mentioned, even a Latino, listen, let's keep it 100. I'm going to be real. The Cubans in South Florida move like a white person in America. So they don't view, this ain't no POC convo. This is a them versus us in many cases. And this is what we're covering right now with immigration, with how Venezuelans voted. Now they're being deported. Hey, how did we vote a couple of months ago? We have to have that convo. I think we have to talk. If we're going to have this people of color universal, we have to be very honest about the biases that exist within our race and ethnicity. And we have to just be honest about that. So I lead with honesty and openness. I tell them, this is not why I got here. And if this won't change when we have these end of the year reviews, I'm probably going to be more inclined to go to a diverse newsroom. period. And I think you have to be unflinchingly about that, because I'm not going to be more uncomfortable than you. If I'm uncomfortable in this space, then we are going to be uncomfortable. That's just, but now again, I don't want to tell you anything that'll jeopardize your job.
Too late.
But I'm speaking from the work I know you're gonna put in. These skills transfer. Don't ever feel like you have to stay. And you're not tethered to any one job. They don't own you. You're not their slave. You do the work that you're supposed to do. And if you feel like they're not open to your perspective, they're paying you lip service, start filing them applications on the side. Get to know the Rachels, the Cats of the world, and we move chess, not checkers. That's what I'll tell all of y'all. You know what you see and believe that. Don't, it's kind of even in a relationship. When people show you who they are the first time, believe them. Treat the newsroom the same way. And I hope that's the realest thing I could ever tell you. My bad, I got in the zone right there. Like, that's a Raven. Like, got to come back to reality.
I don't want to make anybody in this room jealous, but Jordan Parker is now the mentee of Torrance Latham.
I'm the old head.
And if I were you, Jordan, I'd start selling access to, the 1 hour a month. Break off for 20 minutes for somebody for $50, whatever it'll take. You will actually get to spend the next year having at least 1 hour a month talking to your mentor. We've already started to make some connections. Hope to have you all connected by the end of the month. But this conversation is, I think, the foundation for you to believe and understand that you found your tribe. Mm-hmm. And this is a community that will help you navigate, particularly these latest years, what's going on now in the world and in journalism. So I want us to show our appreciation to Catalina Camia of Bloomberg Law, Torrance Latham of the Miami Herald, and Bianca Quilantan of Politico. Thank you all so much for joining us.
And feel empowered in this moment. Feel empowered from this. Everything happening in the political environment, feel empowered. This is where you come in. This is people didn't understand the value of truth and information. This is where we show them this is what journalism, the fourth estate was always about this. And go back in history, look at the times that we've had to navigate so many pivotal moments in our history. That should buoy you. And you're standing on the backs of the people who came before you and kicked these doors down, who were denied, who had to fight lawsuits, died for our rights to do what we do today. It's a privilege to do this work. And just know that you have your guardian angels and all around you all the time. And really believe that. Really believe it.